About 7 years ago, I think it was 7 years ago, I went to Assisi, Italy for the first time, and I absolutely fell in love. And this past March, I went back. It was a long planned trip, and I went back and took some pictures, and today I'd like to share them. When I first got back from Assisi, I posted a video. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But I posted a video about the doors of Assisi. And it was really a video about using my iPhone, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, to take pictures around Assisi. And I held back all of the other images for the most part. I think I posted maybe 4 or 5 on social media. But I held back most of the other images that I had taken because I planned to use them in a book later. And I decided that I would go ahead and publish them. And I may still do sort of a PDF version of a book later with some of these images and stories behind the images. And, you know, it may or may not be for sale. I don't know. That's somewhere down the line. But I wound up almost the entire week unwittingly using my iPhone. I took a few pictures. I may have taken 30 pictures with my Canon R6 Mark II. And that was just a drop in the bucket. And you know, a lot of those didn't come out right. So almost everything that you're going to see in this video are pictures that I took with my iPhone. This picture behind me, I took this picture 7 years ago when I was there with my Canon 70D and probably at the time, the 18 to 135 f4, f4.5, whatever it was, to 6.3. I forget now. And I have had this image for sale on my Fine Art America site. And I'm going to take it down because I didn't realize until I blew it up this big just how much noise was in the picture. And I don't have the original of that picture to fix it anymore, but I might have some others that are better than this. But I went ahead and blew this picture up. This is now hanging in my bedroom as I am remodeling this room. I cannot really put into words why I love Assisi so much, other than the fact that when we went through the first time with an EF Tours group, the story of St. Francis and the story of St. Clare together really, really hit me. And it wasn't until later, maybe 5 years later, that I started researching the idea of writing a book about my own spiritual journey and tying it to the lives of St. Francis and St. Clare, that I really dug more deeply into their lives, and wow, what I have found. So the images that you're going to see sort of sporadically through this video, I went to the Basilica of St. Francis, which is where he's buried. And the Basilica of St. Francis has 2 levels of sanctuaries. And on the upper level, there are actually 2 sanctuaries. There's one that goes the length, and then there's one that goes off to the right that is reserved for prayer. And I wish that I could have taken more pictures in the Basilica, but they really frown on photography. I took what I could. I saw other people using their phones, and so I didn't feel quite so bad. But I didn't want to make, you know, a nuisance out of myself either. Downstairs is where St. Francis and some of his closest followers are buried. And I don't know, it just has this special aura when you go in. I don't really know, but it's very quiet. Nobody speaks there. It is a place of prayer and contemplation. And it's just absolutely beautiful. I also went to San Damiano, which is the church that Francis sort of started rebuilding before he fully understood his call, that to rebuild God's house didn't mean a church. It meant the church. And San Damiano, well, he lived there for a time. St. Clare lived there for a time. And it was probably the closest thing I got to the essence of these two people, because it wasn't overly ornate. It wasn't built up to be some grand, monastery type thing in their honor. It was just a church. And so when you go in, there's only one light, and there's one window that comes in from, I think, from the west. It might be from the north. I don't remember which way it was, but it's very dark. And then there is this place upstairs where the Poor Clares, the nuns who followed St. Clare, they lived. There is a place marked off where Clare died up there. And again, just a really reverent time of walking through this space. And then, of course, there is the Basilica of St. Clare. And in San Damiano, there is a replica of the crucifix icon that spoke to Francis to call him to rebuild God's house. But the original, the one that St. Francis was praying before, hangs in a chapel in the Basilica of St. Clare. And to just sit there, and again, I will say this, I've said it several times, I'm not Catholic. So, this way that I am drawn to these people is sort of out of step for my tradition. And I'm okay with that. Most of my life's been out of step. But the Basilica of St. Clare, again, is just a beautiful, beautiful place. And then off to the side is this little chapel where this crucifix icon hangs. And it's just, I don't know, the history, the ritual, the redemption, all of it just captures you. It's not a place you can just walk through and say, oh, I've seen it. You have to sit down and you have to really take your time and absorb the space. In addition to those three places, I went to I think it's the Cathedral of San Rufino. San Rufino was the first martyr in Assisi. And it's just doesn't look like much on the outside, but on the inside, it's very beautiful and very hushed and very quiet. And on this particular chapel, they've got places in the floor that have glass you can see underneath, where you can see the original foundations of the cathedral there. And then I went to this place, which is the Basilica of St. Mary among the Angels. And it's actually, Assisi sits on a hillside, and it's down the hillside about a little over a mile away in the valley of Assisi, where the modern town is. And this basilica is built around St. Francis' favorite chapel, the Porziuncola, I think is how you pronounce it. If you're Italian and you want to correct me in the comments, you feel free, but I stumble over that word every time I try to say it. It is the original chapel. Some say it may be the fourth chapel that St. Francis rebuilt, but it is the chapel where he and his followers lived most of their lives. And Francis would sleep in the woods outside the chapel. He would use a rock for a pillow. He would put thistles under him to sleep on, because even in his sleep, he never wanted to feel comfortable in the world. And so to walk into this beautiful, beautiful basilica with all of these side chapels and such grandiose works of art, paintings and sculptures and frescoes, and then to see this little chapel that only seats about 10 or 12 people, right in the middle before the altar. And if you sit there long enough, they hold Mass inside that little chapel. I didn't go in, again, because I'm not Catholic and I felt like I might be intruding. But just the hushed tones, the hushed voices, there is something about it that speaks to my spirit that I can't explain. I also stumbled across the church. I have no idea what the name of it is, but I stumbled across the church that's built over the original house where Francis grew up. And if you go in the chapel, you will see a place off to one side where St. Francis was imprisoned by his parents when they were trying to get him to give up this lifestyle. I don't know. There's just something about Assisi. Some people have different places that speak to them. For me, in the United States, that's Paso Grill, Florida. I've talked about that over and over and over. Paso Grill is just my place to go and really feel like I can relax and eat really good food. And Assisi is that way for me. I love going to Rome. I could go to Rome 17 times a year, but Assisi has a very special place in my heart. And I hope that as you've observed some of these images along the way, that you can see why. We'll see you next time.